Today we're going to be reviewing the Bauer 8 amp 11,000 RPM grinder and comparing it to my Milwaukee 7 amp 12,000 RPM grinder. So which one do you guys think is better? Welcome to the Nightclub, guys. It's your host, the Night Wrencher. Now today we're going to be reviewing the Harbor Freight Bauer 11,000 RPM angle grinder. This is the one with the 5/8 arbor, and it's also the one that has a trigger at the bottom. Now I've used this extensively for the last 2 weeks. We've been running this several hours, cutting a ton of natural stone, and I've personally been fairly impressed with the way it's been performing. We're coming up to the end of the second week, and I figure I'd give this a performance review and then compare it to a similar style Milwaukee grinder that I have right here. At first glance, it actually look very, very similar, and if you have them in your hands, you're probably going to realize that the Milwaukee one is a little bit lighter, but that doesn't discredit this in any way. This is a 12,000 RPM 7 amp. This is an 11,000 RPM 8 amp. So in terms of the way it processes power, this is probably a little bit more efficient as well, because this has less amp draw but more RPM, whereas this tends to hog a little bit more power. Alright, so a couple neat features of the Bauer angle grinder. So we've got the provision for the handle. The handle is switchable from left and right, as well as completely removable. I know on some dewalts and certain makitas they also have the one in the back. I haven't really needed it. Some people really like it, but you know, to each their own. For me, it seemed to work pretty well, just having the left or right. I put it on the left one, and I really haven't needed to switch it as well. It also comes with the guard, but I rarely ever put the guards on my grinders because I like to be suicidal like that. But if you would be smart, you would install the guard. The guard is designed for a 4.5-inch blade. And currently I'm using a 4-inch blade because the 4.5-inch blades were shooting a bunch of crap at my face. I wonder if it's because I wasn't using a guard, but regardless, I get it. We're going to keep using this without the guard because I just like the way it feels. The main reason and the main draw for me was this trigger, and the trigger that's over here. You can actually tell that we've probably either worn it out or it's just really dirty to the point where it won't pop back up on its own. So if I pull it back up, it's fine. I'm sure if I either lube it or grease it, if I put some water on this, it should be able to pop back up on its own. Or maybe if I take it apart, I should be able to blow it off. Like I said, we've put a lot of hours into this grinder, and we've had this, a Makita, and the Milwaukee side by side. And almost everybody picked this up when it was time to cut stone or rock or concrete. Basically, we were just grabbing it with one hand, pushing the trigger with our thumb, and either cutting it like this or cutting it like this. And it was actually very handy. What sucks about grinders that have the push thing over here, the Milwaukee one actually has a very solid feel when it comes to the trigger and the lock. The Makitas are a little funky, either over here or over here, but they seem to pop off. It's not as solid as the Milwaukee is. But I really hate this style of grinder. It's so easy to just be doing something and the vibrations will knock this closed and you gotta push it again, or so maybe you have to actually hold it like this. And I mean, this is really awkward, you know. Whereas if I'm holding it like this, I could just go and just, you know, do whatever I want, and the trigger's always being pressed. It also comes with a lock, so if I push it and it's got the lock here, it'll stay locked. I haven't really found a purpose for it yet. I also realized when I was first using it that this actually has like an overheat safety feature. It's got like a circuit breaker inside. If you stress it out a little bit too much, it'll trigger the circuit breaker and you won't be able to use it for a while. It didn't trigger the safety while I was at work, but it did trigger while I was cutting some steel here at the shop, and that was a little bit of an inconvenience, but I mean, I've only been able to trigger it once, and after that it's been pretty solid. One thing that does bother me about this grinder is that the trigger, although it's very convenient and easy to use, it doesn't have a safety on the trigger. So what happened was, I had it on the floor. I always put my grinders facing up, because after it spins, I don't wait for it to stop spinning. I just put it on the floor, and I put it like this, and it'll keep spinning. But it was like that, and I happened to move my foot, and I pushed the trigger with my foot, and it started spinning. Whereas my paddle, dewalt, or even the makitas that have a paddle on it, have this little thing where it flips up and then you can push it. I'd really like to have either a button that I have to push and then push it, or some sort of little tab that wouldn't let me push it. I know it's kind of like a dumb thing to consider, but it's actually pretty important. I'm always missing it when I have to pass the grinder to other people. I'm gonna have to start grabbing it like this and passing it, because if I grab it like this, chances are really high that I'm going to be pushing this trigger, and that actually really bothers me. In terms of performance, this thing never overheated. It felt really good, and the body never got any hot. Everybody at work was actually really impressed with the way this thing performed, and they were even more impressed when they found out this was only like 45 bucks. The reason I'm comparing this to this one and not probably the appropriate version to compare it to is because the appropriate version is like $200. The appropriate Milwaukee with the trigger over here and all, you know, that's like $200. This is 45 bucks. The cheapest DeWalt that had the paddle over here was 75, 80 bucks. So for the money, this is definitely a good buy. It's a little bit on the dangerous side, and the trigger does feel a little bit finicky. I'm going to try to lube it and see if I can get it to work properly again. But like I said, we put several hours on this, and it's been able to keep up. The motor itself has been flawless. I'm going to go ahead and hook it up right now so you guys can hear it. Now I'm going to go ahead and compare it to my Milwaukee. You can definitely tell that the Milwaukee is a way more efficient grinder. Power is just delivered. The draw on my electrical, I don't know if you guys could tell, but the lights dimmed a lot lower with the Bauer, the Milwaukee. There's hardly any draw. There was hardly any draw on the initial hit with the grinder compared to the Bauer, which tells me that the electronics on this are very rock solid. Whereas the Bauer is a little bit more finicky, takes a little bit more time to speed up. If we were to compare this directly to my Makita, I'm pretty sure that the Makita and this Bauer would be pretty much on par with each other. I've used Makita grinders for a long time, and when I started using this, I didn't even feel like I needed the Makita. This thing was perfect. I love the way the handle is. If I was to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably rate this an 8 out of 10. The trigger really bothered me, especially without the lock. And also the overheat protection seems a little bit odd because we were able to run the other grinders at much higher temperatures without any kind of issues. That might be, you know, maybe that's just a personal thing on my part, but I do like my grinders to run, you know, on the peak of destruction, if that makes sense. I don't want to accidentally overheat the grinder and then I can't use it for 10 minutes. That would be really annoying, especially if I only had one. But would I buy this again? I'd definitely buy this again. If I can figure out how to keep the trigger from sticking, it would probably be a 10 out of 10. And also, if it had the lock, everything else is absolutely perfect. I don't think I'd change anything else. I love the trigger feature, and I think you guys will enjoy it if you guys get it. So that about does it for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed if you do end up buying this. This isn't a sponsored video. I just really wanted to review this. I don't think the Bauer tools get enough credit. They're very well engineered, even though they're a little bit of Chinesium built into them. But for the most part, pretty solid tool. I'm going to keep using this. I really like it. We're really hard on these tools, and this thing's keeping up so far. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but 2 weeks with this one and also a brand new Makita that we've been using side by side, this thing has been kicking its butt every single day. So that about does it. I will see you all in the next one. Night Wrencher out.